Well, welcome into Oklahoma Postgame Live. My name is Jason Ray. Sorry, it's been a little bit of a delay here, just because of just some technical difficulties with the site here, but we're on. So, welcome in. Like I said, my name is Jason Ray. Welcome to our Oklahoma Postgame Live for Oklahoma's victory over SMU 28-11 in what was a very, very bizarre game. All the way around. It was really, I don't think, a lot like anyone would have expected in a 28-11 game, lower scoring, certainly on both sides of the ball than most people were expecting. So hang in here for the next 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll talk everything Oklahoma football tonight in terms of just kind of the instant reactions for tonight's game and what has been a loaded day of college football for the Sooners. So just a couple of announcements. Make sure that you remember to follow me live at Jason Ray 1 and here at the Voice of College Football, the Oklahoma football host, on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Make sure that you're following us for our Sooner Tailgate live show, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 Central on Fridays. And then typically Oklahoma Live with myself and Mark Rogers most Wednesdays at 11:30 a.m. So thanks for jumping in with us later this evening. So wanted to give a little bit of time for those of you that were watching the Texas and Alabama game, and then certainly for those of you that were at the game coming home, finishing that out late. So. As I mentioned, a very bizarre game, and just before I get to any comments or any of my my instant reaction, I think you guys just to kind of set the precedent as we go through the season. Last week was a little bit of an anomaly. Didn't really need to say that, but with that being said, coming in to this, I'm not one of those guys. I try to play it down the middle, as much as I can, and be very transparent and be very honest with my reactions, with my thoughts, just what my thought process is after each and every one of these Oklahoma games as we go forward through the season. So I'm not going to be one of those guys that's overly critical on every single thing, blaming coaches, this and that. But at the same time, I'm not going to provide a ton of blind optimism in terms of what I saw, not only this game, but as we go forward through the season. So I think, and so let's keep it there. And then just so you guys have a good frame of reference, I think most of you guys have been with me over the last few years as we've done this, but just wanted to make sure that was clear and apparent as we move forward. So first, gosh, I don't even know where to start. Like I said, this was a much lower scoring game than I anticipated, certainly on both sides of the ball. I think when we talked the other day, I said somewhere in the neighborhood of 48-24, 45-24. I think that was my synopsis. So I'll say I think the defense played a little bit better than I anticipated. Offense didn't play quite as well as I anticipated. So let's go through and what that looks like. So defensively, holding a team like SMU to 11 points, that was a solid performance all across the board. Again, there was some areas in the game where Oklahoma wasn't getting a lot of pressure from the defensive front. There was some guys open in the defensive backfield from time to time, some wide open at times. But again, much better overall. I think the tackling was much better. Stutzman was everywhere. I think he had 20 tackles in the game, had a fumble recovery there in the third quarter. So was really good, solid overall. Linebacker core, Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, Jaron Kanik, there was a couple, what you would expect for him his first year. There's going to be a couple of times per game where he's not where he's supposed to be. But I think from time to time, his athleticism from time to time will make up for that, and his speed will make up for that as well. So that's a solid part of that. When you look at injuries in the back end, Gentry Williams went out early on in the game, and I don't think that he came back. Kenai Walker actually played well in his absence. Peyton Bowen got quite a bit of run this evening as well. Played well. Really had one pass interference call that I thought that was pretty weak in the end zone, and then made a really good play on a fourth down. On a fourth down play, batting the ball away, getting a pass defense. So I thought he played really well on the back end. Again, defensive line was okay. They've got to be a little bit better in terms of their pass rush. I thought at the point of attack, again, you're not really seeing them get blown off the ball like a lot of the times that we were seeing that last year for Oklahoma defensively, right? But I think it's still got to be better when you go up against, and this is kind of my thoughts overall, and we'll get to that later, just kind of overall like trajectory thoughts. So tackling was good. Looking at third down conversions, SMU was 4 for 16, which was, again, you're able to get off the field 2 for 4 on fourth down conversions. So that's the things that you like to see. You like to see them being able to get off the field like that. And again, coming into the game, I'm thinking if Oklahoma holds SMU to anywhere from 17 to 24 points, you're happy with that as an Oklahoma fan. You're excited about that. So I think that's good going into game number 3 against Tulsa next weekend. Is that you're averaging 5.5 points per game at this point through 2 games. Again, you play Tulsa, who only scored 10, I think, against a really good Washington team this past weekend. So another opportunity to clean things up. Excuse me, I'm sorry. To clean things up and get better. So really good, like I said, good overall. Probably, I don't know, B minus or B minus, B plus type performance for the Oklahoma defense overall. Offensively, it was not anywhere near good enough. I thought the offensive line struggled by and large for most of the game. It looked like they were having a lot of trouble getting a push, particularly early on. The protection, I don't know that I would necessarily say the protection was bad, but Dylan Gabriel had guys in his face, was not able to have a situation where he was afforded a lot of time to scale his receivers and look downfield. Again, you saw some of the same things that we saw early on and throughout the season last year for Dylan Gabriel. He was missing a little bit inaccurate on a couple of throws. Getting a little bit impatient in the pocket from time to time, running when maybe he had a little bit more time. Just so those types of things. There was a couple of other things that I saw related to just not being in sync offensively, which again, this is why you have these games, and it's a really good opportunity to have a game where you win by 17, but then you've got a lot of things that that you've got to clean up on. And again, some of these games early on, it's not quite it's not quite exactly what you're going to get from these teams early on in the season. They're going to get better, they're going to improve throughout the season, and we'll see where both Oklahoma and SMU land. Running backs, again, I thought Tawi Walker was the best running back that we had. I think we had like 21 carries for 117 yards, if I remember right. Pulling up their stats right now. Yeah, 21 carries, 117 yards. Had a couple of receptions as well. 3 catches for 25 yards. Marcus Major, 8 carries for 39 yards, and he had 2 catches for 23 yards and a 27-yard touchdown reception there late in the game. Again, I thought Tawi Walker was the best running back that we had. Runs tough between the tackles, a little bit quicker than you might think. But ultimately, I don't know what the deal is with Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk. I don't know if it is a situation where they are still nursing injuries. I don't know if um, they are in the doghouse for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but those are the. I still stand by the fact that those are the two most talented running backs that Oklahoma has on their roster. Tawee Walker is a nice back. For who is playing right now, he does look like the best. But again, I think coming into the season, we thought, me specifically, but a lot of people thought like running back was not a concern because we have significant depth with Sawchuk and Barnes, and then you've got Walker and Marcus Major as well there. But the fact that your two lead running backs that you came into the season anticipating having are not there, or I mean, essentially they're not there. Javonte Barnes, I think, had 2 carries. 2 carries for 5 yards. Gavin Sawchuk had 1 carry for 1 yard. So, and I think, and I didn't notice this, but I saw some things on social media that during a lot of the timeouts, they weren't anywhere near the huddle. So I don't know what that situation is, but in any event, the offensive game plan was just weird for me. I thought I'm not one to really question a lot of play calling, but I thought the game plan I think the game plan early on was such that Levy and the offensive staff felt like they would be able to dominate maybe the line of scrimmage a little bit more than they were able to. And when it was really kind of a stalemate, or maybe not necessarily a stalemate, but when SMU, won the line of scrimmage battle more often than not, I think it threw them for a loop. And I think it took my main issue with the coaching situation on the offensive side tonight was the fact that it took them so long to really alter that game plan. It took them to the fourth quarter till they, altered the game plan a little bit. We saw a lot of Jaden Gibson last week. We saw a lot of Nick Anderson. We saw a lot of Jaquez Petaway. And I will have to go back and look at the tape, but I didn't see them in the game hardly at all in this game. So, again, I think it's a good problem to have when you score 28 points and you felt like the offense was a little bit of a dumpster fire tonight. So, anyways, that's got to get better. Offensive line's got to get better. Savion Byrd was at times was awful tonight. Got beat on a regular basis, at least early on in the game. Got taken out a little bit. I think Everett played a lot more in this game than what we saw Savion Byrd play. So not sure. Again, I always look forward to listening. This is obviously free pub for him, but I always love listening to the Oklahoma Breakdown with Gabe Eichert. He does a really, really solid job on talking about the offensive line and specifically each individual and how they're playing, and just kind of from a X's and O's technique perspective, what that looks like, what that has looked like for them. But in any event, was not anywhere near as good as it needs to be at the line of scrimmage. And so, again, I would say maybe like a C- for the offense. SMU's not a bad team, as we mentioned. I think this was, coming in, it looks like, maybe the second best offensive team that Oklahoma will face all year. Maybe not. You look at, Oklahoma doesn't face Texas Tech. Oklahoma doesn't face Kansas State in the regular season, doesn't face Baylor. So, not that Baylor would be up there, but Texas Tech and Kansas State would potentially be a better offensive team than these two, than this team that Oklahoma faced today. But Texas is clearly a better offensive team. You could certainly make an argument that there might be one or two that are better. But again, this is certainly in the upper echelon in terms of overall play. But I think the thing this is the most glaring thing that I came away with this game is the fact that really at the line of scrimmage, they look right now to be marginally better than they were a year ago. Um, you know, Kirk Herbstreit that's kind of made its round, made a tweet the other day or made a comment that Oklahoma was about 2 years behind Texas in terms of their roster going into the SEC. And, I sort of scoffed at it a little bit and again, close your eyes or close your ears here if you're wanting sunshine pumping, because this is not a sunshine pumping comment, that I think he's right. After watching Texas against Alabama, watching us, our offense and defensive lines against SMU, we're not at that level. It's hard to define if you're 2 years behind, but I would say, at a minimum, we're probably at least a year away from where Texas is. So if you didn't have a chance, watch Texas again, maybe in a replay or something like that. Rewatch the game against Alabama. In a lot of ways, they looked like they were, potentially the better team on both lines of scrimmage. Like I said, they're there. We're not quite there. So we'll see how that continues to go. Recruiting is in a good spot. And this is one of the reasons why I didn't, overreact one way or the other last week against Arkansas State. Yes, it was a nice win. Big confidence builder. I don't know if the offense started kind of feeling themselves a little bit after that, but again, some good things and some bad things that you can certainly correct upon as you go into the remainder of the season here, as you exit non-conference play next week against Tulsa. So a couple of questions they held back. I've heard that comment. I don't really buy into it completely. I guess I can understand it to a certain degree, but you're in a 3-point game in the fourth quarter and you're holding stuff back. That doesn't make any sense to me. Now, the one thing that I will say is this is a game that this team probably loses last year, but they sort of righted the ship. I don't know. They right the ship this in the fourth quarter, played really well in the fourth quarter, both complementary football that they needed to play after SMU cut it to 14-11. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, without a doubt, as far as that goes. Jeff Lebby tried hard to give it away tonight. So I think, coming out of this game, there is going to be a ton of discussion about Jeff Lebby in terms of, his game plan, play calling in this game. And then not only that, but also when you look at some of the post-game stuff with Jeff Lebby. And for those of you that haven't seen it, there was a tweet, and I don't remember who had the original tweet, but it was Art Briles in an Oklahoma on the sidelines. It appeared to be on the sidelines in Oklahoma gear with Jeff Lebby going up to hug him or give him a handshake or whatever it is. But I think there's a couple of things. Obviously, I think we all know that Art Briles is Jeff Lebby's father-in-law. So I think you take that he's part of the family. But then that's just something you can't do. Like, he can't, with everything that he's done, like, he can't be on the sidelines. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions. Brent Venables was obviously not happy about it. Talked about that was going to be dealt with. Jeff Lebby when he was asked about it, was very defensive. said that was the grandfather of his children, and essentially like he has every right to be down there. It's just a terrible look for Oklahoma, for the just for the program overall, to have a guy like Art Briles on the sideline, family or not. I think that should have been a discussion, or I would have assumed would have been a discussion that was had with Levy when he came on, that was a situation that wouldn't be allowed. So we'll see what the aftermath of that looks like. Wasn't the greatest day for Jeff Levy overall. So I'm sure there was a little bit of frustration in his voice, just generally speaking, with that. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, he's got to be better. The offense has to be better overall. Unboxing reviews and more. Love that. What's the deal with the offense? We had all these receivers all involved last week, and half of them seem to not play. No, it's exactly. That was one of the things that I saw that was very interesting to me watching the game, is that you didn't see Petaway and you didn't see. I think I saw Nick Anderson in maybe once or twice in the game. I think I saw. Jaden Gibson, I don't remember. I saw him in special teams early on after the Oklahoma blocked that punt early on in the game, but I don't know that I saw him at all on offense. So that's going to be interesting to see. Like, I think they talked last week where they felt comfortable playing 6 to 8 guys, and it didn't look like they played that many today. Again, I could be wrong. I'll go back and watch the film as well. But yeah, I think that was interesting, and maybe it was something that SMU was doing defensively, but there were very few, if any, deep balls that Oklahoma threw in this game, and maybe that was Gabriel being a little bit too safe with the ball. Maybe that was by design on what they thought that they were going to get from SMU defensively, whatever that was. But I think, one of the things that you've got to see, my main complaint here with Levy in this in the offense is it's not necessarily the game plan. It is what it is, but you have to have the ability to adapt and change and adjust to what your game plan is, to what the defense is showing you, and maybe what you're seeing as the strengths when you're getting into the game, right? So those are things that you would expect, or that I would expect, for Jeff Levy to improve on and to adjust a little bit more. Mr. John, why didn't DG throw the ball more often? Did he have communication issues with his receivers? 3rd and 7. Yeah, I don't know. The only thing that I can think of on a couple of these plays is maybe the look that they were getting pre-snap from SMU that made them think that being able to run the ball, being able to run the ball a little bit in those situations was going to be better. Maybe it was a smaller box, more people in coverage, and they felt like they had an advantage there. But the advantage wasn't there. Certainly in a lot of ways. So, they started to throw the ball a little bit more later in the game, and obviously was a little bit more successful. So, I think they're learning a little bit about what they have offensively on the offensive line. It just wasn't as good as I would have anticipated here tonight. I know that SMU is a solid team. They're a team that I think has the ability to challenge Tulane potentially for an American championship this year. But having said that, this is a team that Oklahoma should be able to, I don't want to say dominate, but at some point they should be able to wear them down. And it really didn't happen that much. I mean, maybe a little bit in the 4th quarter, but not anywhere what I would think for sure. Freeman should get the ball a lot more on offense. Yeah, I mean, again, it's the head scratching thing to me. The game plan was puzzling at best. because I think there was only one. I think he only got the ball once. I mean, and who dropped the pass, but excuse me, sorry. He only got the ball one time, and he dropped the pass, but still, not enough opportunities to get the ball in his hands. So, yeah, no, again just a head scratcher on offense, but again, I think there's positive signs in the fact that, he still was able to score 28 points in what looked like a bit of a dumpster fire on the offensive side of the ball in this game. So, yeah, absolutely. Defense won at something we haven't been able to say in a long time. The offense didn't forget to suddenly suddenly. Let me read this again. Sorry. Defense won it, something we haven't been able to say in a long time, and the offense didn't forget to suddenly not play, but it'll be okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's too early to tell. I think on the offense, you can't really. There's not a whole lot that you can tell from that game one. So I think we need more of a sample set to know exactly what this offense is going to be just yet. And I don't know that we'll necessarily learn as much next week either against Tulsa. I think you'll learn a little bit more when they go to Cincinnati in a couple of weeks. So, yeah, I think, but you want to get this team playing complementary football, which, when they do, this team's pretty good. This is a pretty good team when they're playing complementary football. But, for a couple of for a large majority of the game tonight, that wasn't something that was happening. Hey Sheldon, thanks for joining. A lot of a few unfortunate penalties. I mean, there was a face mask on Ethan Downs, when he was looking to try to get a sack, and it just didn't happen. He inadvertently grabbed the face mask. But yeah, I think the penalties, and I'll go look at the the total penalties and yardage here. 9 for 88, and SMU only had 2 for 15. So again, there's the 2 turnovers by SMU, and then the 9 penalties from Oklahoma. Just not a very clean game overall there on both sides as far as that was going. Yep, agreed about. And the red zone defense was good, and I think third down defense was good. Those are the excuse me. Those are the 2 things that you love. You love to see better red zone defense and better at forcing fourth downs and getting that defense off the field. Which in 2 games we've seen a much improved area as far as that goes. We need a new OC instead of running Jackson Earl on Thursday. She let him throw it to keep the defense honest. I mean, I think eventually you're right, Sheldon. I think you're in a day and age where defense and the sophistication, you run it enough, you've got to be able to have a counter off of that. So we'll see if that continues to, if he plays in that situation, or if he doesn't play in that, in those situations, and they go with Tawi Walker or whatever that looks like. But in those situations, I think you've got to show the ability for a pass out of that concept for that play to continuously work. At least maybe there's more of a a run around the right end, kind of an outside zone type of scheme, opposed to just kind of running that up the middle. I mean, he's not big enough yet in terms of his stature. He's not quite what Blake Bell was in terms of his size right now, but I think he can get there. But right now, he's not there. So, yeah, I think the play calling has to be better, game plan adjustments, all of that stuff has to be better moving forward against Tulsa shouldn't be a big time test, but then in 2 weeks you go to Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a team who's played a little. I think a lot of us thought that was going to be a team that was very very much in the lower half of the Big 12, and they may end up being closer to the top half of the Big 12. They they beat Pittsburgh. They had that game well in hand, 27-7 late, but Pittsburgh made a little bit of a run. But Cincinnati still won that game 27-21 over Pittsburgh. They got Miami, Ohio this week, and or this upcoming week, and I believe the Oklahoma-Cincinnati game will be at 11 a.m. on September 23rd. But again, that's going to be a tough test for the Sooners in their first game of conference play. A little bit tougher of a test than we thought. So as you move forward, from this, as Oklahoma looks to, like I said, looks to move forward in a positive way. What does this look like? Again, I don't think after one game you can get too high, and then after game two you can necessarily get too low. I think it's easy to see that this team is improved. You can see the team speed on defense is improved. You can see at the point of attack on defense it's improved, and tackling is improved. But I think the biggest thing is, do we see an improvement on the offensive side of the ball? I was as much as I was happy with the wide receiver play in week one. It wasn't quite as good in week two, and I don't know if it is because of the game plan or because there wasn't a lot of kids that got to play, any of those types of things. But it was not great, today overall offensive performance. But hey, we can see, you can learn from this and see how they're able to get better. So Sheldon question, very condescending in nature. Is Texas back? I don't know. I think certainly you look at this game against Alabama. Alabama may not be quite as good as they have been in the past. Quarterback position isn't as good, certainly. Texas had some guys just running wide open in the Alabama secondary, so that was interesting to see. I don't know if the speed of Texas receivers hurt them or just lack of communication or what that was in the secondary for Alabama. But again, Texas is really good up front. They've got some really good. Quinn Ewers is a really good quarterback. They're going to be in the top 5 this week when the new poll comes out. So at this point, and again, there's still a little bit of overreactions that happen in week 2. But right now, when you look at Oklahoma versus Texas, I would say Texas is probably 10 to 14 points better than Oklahoma right now. Looking at this, and that may be even conservative. So it's not as big of a gap as what it was last year. And last year was it wasn't that same gap. 49 points. It was a little bit of a situation where with Oklahoma not having a backup quarterback, but we've talked about that. We've talked about that as well. In the off season and things like that was just kind of a perfect storm, so to speak, for Oklahoma and Texas for that matter. But right now, Texas is a much better football team than Oklahoma. Again, I don't, 14 to 17 points, whatever that looks like, right now could be different come, in 4 weeks from now. when that game kicks off. But right now, after 2 games, that's just the way it is. We're not quite there. So again, like, there's some questions about the playbook. I think that's a cop out. I mean, it just is. Like, in game 1, like, I can get it. In game 2, you're only 14 points, a 14-point pick against that team. You're at a 3-point game in the fourth quarter. Like, if you're holding stuff back, that, to me, that's terrible coaching. That's just terrible coaching. If you're holding stuff back and you put your team in a position to potentially lose just because you want to hold some stuff back, you're not that good. I mean, that's just a mismanagement of your roster. That's a mismanagement of your team, and you're not putting teams in a position to be successful. If you're holding stuff back, now if you play Arkansas State and then you're playing Idaho State in the second game, okay, I can get behind that. Not opening up the playbook. I just think that's a cop out. I don't, I don't believe that. Yeah, certainly there's stuff that you don't want to show in game 1, but Brett Lashley, SMU's head coach, said that they felt like Oklahoma ran defensively about 20 different defenses in this game. You mean to tell me that Oklahoma defensive coordinator, basically Brent Venables, head coach, that has a heavy influence in calling the game, is going to be so complex on defense, but then they're going to hold stuff back on offense? I don't buy it. I just don't. I don't buy it. And again, if it's something that they did, then that is, I think that's just horrible on the coaching staff, particularly the offensive side of the ball. If they were holding stuff back, particularly in a game like this, it's not like you're a 35, 40-point pick. I mean, you're a 14-point favorite, a 2-touchdown point favorite. If you feel like that, you're holding stuff back at that point. I don't think that's realistic. I just don't think Oklahoma's as good up front as a lot of people would like them to be, including myself. And I wish Oklahoma was much better up front around the line of scrimmage, because that's where you win games. I mean, that's why. I mean, that's one of the big reasons why we struggled last year. We got pushed around. So, again, it's better than it was last year, but it's not anywhere where it needs to be up front. So, again, like, that has to get better. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong about the opening it up. But if it's not opened up right now, and granted, I'm not saying that you show every single play in your playbook, but if you're holding a significant amount of your offense back at this point, to me, again, that's just bad coaching. But we'll see as they continue to go forward. Oklahoma goes, like I said, they will go to Tulsa next week, and then they go to Cincinnati before hosting Iowa State before Red River. So we will see. Again, I think, I learned this from Kelvin Sampson early on in the year. It's a basketball analogy, but I think you're never quite as good as your best game, and you're probably not quite as bad as your worst game. So I don't know that game 2 was necessarily just a bad performance overall. But I do think that you have certainly a lot of things to clean up and a lot of things to get better for when you look at this team playing Tulsa, which it's a road game in nature, in name. But Oklahoma will have a crowd advantage, I would guess, somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 to 35-35. A lot to be excited about. Interesting, going forward. Again, the schedule still sets up for Oklahoma to have a successful season. This could be still anywhere from an 8 to 10 win season. That doesn't change at all. Teams can get much better as you go through the season. So just some things to clean up on the offensive side of the ball, and there is certainly no sky is falling. When you look at social media, it's a little bit in between both of those. There's those that are just going to say, oh yeah, that's fine, it was just SMU. And then there's those that are basically just going to say the sky is falling because of this performance. So it's neither of the two, somewhere in between. So we'll see. Very, very excited, intrigued to see how this team continues to move forward throughout the year. So thanks for jumping on here late night. I know it's almost 11 p.m. local time here. If you didn't have an opportunity to watch this, feel free. This will post live, in about 5 or 10 minutes. And then you can come back and watch that anytime. Just as a reminder, remember to watch me and Mark typically on Wednesdays around 11:30. That does fluctuate from time to time. And then I will go live typically on Fridays around 3 p.m. For our tailgate live show. So until next week, Boomer Sooner, and God bless.